Welcome to this new automotive news video for Thursday, July 16th, 2026. On today's agenda, we're going to talk about the introduction of a new tax specifically for electric cars, from BMW, which has just announced some very bad news about the new X5, and Toyota, which is unveiling a completely crazy strategy to compete with Chinese brands, and Chinese manufacturers who are continuing their aggressive pricing push, announcing a new car for the French market, which is very likely to shake up the competition. I hope today's topics will interest you. If that's the case, as usual, I'm counting on you to show it by leaving a like, subscribing for the next videos, leaving a comment where you share your opinion about today's news, and boosting this video if that option appears for you. Just before that, let me quickly add two auto news items. The first is rather good news for the French automotive industry, because after months of speculation, Stellantis has finally made a decision. The DS brand will not disappear, even though the brand is going through a very difficult period. In 2024, for example, DS sold only 40,000 cars worldwide, which is less than 1% of the group's sales. And on top of that, it has the worst network profitability in the group. Despite these very poor results, the group assures that DS will remain an independent brand. It will not be merged with Citroën, despite persistent rumors about this. However, it's confirmed that DS will be overseen by Citroën in the Stellantis 2030 strategic plan, which means that even if DS will keep a certain freedom, a certain room to maneuver, its future models will very likely still be rebadged Citroëns. And the other quick item I wanted to share is that nearly 20 years after the launch of the Q5 model, Audi is finally getting ready to launch the first RS Q5 in its history, its first purely sporty version. There isn't much confirmed information about it except that it will arrive sometime in 2027, and that under its hood we'll find the 630 horsepower hybrid twin-turbo V6, which is also found under the hood of the latest RS5. BMW has indeed just made a decision that may surprise or even disappoint some future buyers of the upcoming 995. While the manufacturer has been promising for several years now a revolution with its new generation Neue Klasse and its fully electric NCL platform, which serves as the basis for the new X3 or the new fully electric i3, for example. Regarding the iX5, which will actually be more expensive and higher up in the range, BMW has made a very strange choice, since they decided that it would not be based on the new generation NCL platform, but rather on the old Claire platform, a multi-energy architecture that was developed in the early 2010s. A decision that may seem surprising, considering that BMW is investing 10 billion euros in the development of the Neue Klasse generation. So why go back to an older platform? Quite simply because this CLAR platform will allow the manufacturer to continue producing combustion, hybrid, and electric versions on the same assembly line. It's an economic decision, likely saving them nearly €1 billion they would otherwise spend modernizing factories with new electric car production lines. But also because in many countries, especially in the United States, which is one of BMW's biggest markets, the electric car market is in free fall. To satisfy everyone, BMW has no choice but to continue offering combustion engine versions based on this old platform. And that, even if it means that the electric versions end up being sacrificed a bit, since because of the use of this old platform, the range of the fully electric version of the X5 will be lower than that offered by the X3, which is actually cheaper and lower in the lineup. And that's even though the X3 uses a much smaller battery. That's because this iX5 is particularly heavy, since the CLAR platform requires vehicles to have additional reinforcements that add a lot of weight. It's almost 600 kilos heavier than the latest generation iX3. And, of course, with 600 extra kilos, even with bigger batteries, the range goes down. So BMW found this compromise that allows them to keep production profitable and flexible, even if it means sacrificing some of the new technologies they specifically developed for their future electric cars. The bad news about electric cars doesn't just concern BMW, because guess what? It's now 100% official. A specific tax for electric cars is coming very soon. For years, European governments have encouraged drivers to switch to electric cars with bonuses, tax exemptions, and the promise of lower operating costs compared to internal combustion cars. But that promise is falling apart, as a new European country has just confirmed the arrival of a new tax specifically for electric cars. It's the United Kingdom, with a new mileage tax. So, for now, this only concerns the United Kingdom. But this could still happen elsewhere in Europe, including someday in France. And that's not really a surprise, since we knew very well that, little by little, as combustion engine cars disappeared, the taxes that applied to them would be transferred to electric cars. It's just that we didn't expect it to happen so soon, at a time when users, European citizens, still haven't switched to electric cars in large numbers. Specifically, what's going to happen in the United Kingdom is that starting from April 2028, electric cars will be taxed at a rate of 2.2 euro cents per kilometer. A driver who covers an average of 13,000 kilometers per year, which is about the French average, would have to pay nearly 300 euros in annual tax, a new tax that will also be applied to plug-in hybrid cars, which also have large batteries. For them, the tax will be halved, 1 euro cent per kilometer. Behind this tax lies a problem that all countries will have to face with the rise, so to speak, of electric cars, since as they become more widespread, revenue from fuel taxes is collapsing. The British government hopes to recover 1 to 1.5 billion euros per year, starting from 2028 or 2029. A decision that is not without risk since, according to the British Office for Budget Responsibility, this new tax could result in nearly 440,000 fewer electric car sales during the period studied, because of, first, the increase in their operating costs, and second, because of the fear felt by British citizens of seeing new taxes imposed on electric cars. Indeed, several organizations in the British automotive sector believe that this reform is simply coming much too soon, while the transition to electric vehicles remains very fragile. There is nothing at this point to indicate that France will follow exactly the same path. What we do know, however, is that as revenue from the TCPE, the fuel tax, decreases, countries like France will simply have to find new sources of funding. What is also certain is that after years of bonuses and purchase incentives, the electric car is probably entering a new era, the era of taxes. While the rules of the game are changing for millions of drivers, some manufacturers are also completely changing their strategy. That's the case with Toyota, which is making a bet that very few would have imagined. In response to the offensive from Chinese brands, most companies are trying to develop their own technologies on their own. But Toyota wants to do things completely differently. Toyota, which is still the largest car manufacturer in the world, now believes that no brand will be able to compete alone against China. Its president, Koji Sato, wants to propose to all Japanese brands to create a new alliance. Honda, Subaru, in short, all the Japanese brands that still exist are working together to reduce their operating and manufacturing costs to jointly develop engines, chassis, electronics, vehicles. Many components unseen by customers, such as steel, wiring harnesses, and certain plastics. By standardizing as many auto parts as possible, Toyota wants to allow the whole industry, all brands, to devote more resources, time, and money to developing other technologies that will really make a difference. So Toyota wants a kind of industrial merger of Japanese brands. It remains to be seen now if the other Japanese manufacturers will be on the same page and if Toyota will manage to convince all Japanese manufacturers to set aside some of their habits to stand together against a Chinese industry that is advancing at an impressive speed. And speaking of that, we're going to talk about a new Chinese brand that's arriving in France with a new model sold at a particularly attractive price. It's Geely. Geely already exists in France, but it's not very well known yet. They're counting on the arrival of a new model called the E2 to make a bigger mark on the French electric car market. This E2 is a city car designed to compete directly with models like the Renault 5, the electric Peugeot 208, and the upcoming Volkswagen ID Polo, but at a much lower price. It's 4.14 meters long, which is 20 centimeters longer than the electric Renault 5. Thanks to its larger size, it offers more interior space. For example, its trunk has a capacity of 375 liters plus a front trunk, the famous frunk, of 70 liters. Geely also claims that the rear seats are more spacious than those of the French city car. Under the hood, two versions will be offered. The first comes with a 30 kilowatt-hour LFP battery paired with an 82 horsepower motor. It claims a range of 250 kilometers, but it features what they call fast charging, at 70 kilowatts, allowing you to go from 30 to 80% charge in 25 minutes. The second version, which is a bit more upscale, gets a 39 kilowatt-hour battery, a 116 horsepower motor, 345 kilometers of WLTP range, and also features fast charging at 80 kilowatts. With these numbers, it compares more to the Renault 5 Urban Range than to the Comfort Range version. But there's still a notable difference, the price, since the Urban Range version of the Renault 5, which still has 30 kilometers less range, is sold at Renault dealerships for around 25,000 euros, while the Geely E2 should start just below the 20,000 euro mark. It's also a way to compete with other Chinese brands like BYD, with its Dolphin Surf, or MG, with its MG4 Urban, which is sold at a very similar price. So it probably won't be the cheapest electric city car sold in France, but it will still be among the least expensive. And above all, it focuses more on interior space, comfort, and versatility rather than purely aggressive pricing like BYD or MG. So we'll see if it works or not, but one thing is certain. It's one more competitor for the electric Renault 5 to face. And especially behind this Geely E2, we shouldn't forget that it's actually one of the biggest automotive groups in the world, because even if the Geely brand isn't very well known, it's still the one that owns a whole bunch of brands like Volvo, Zeekr, Lotus, Link, and Co. Brands that are really huge. That's it for today's news. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, as always, I count on you to show it by leaving a like, subscribing for the next videos, and supporting the channel by clicking the join button below. See you tomorrow for the next one. Bye.